Hello, everybody. Good morning. I think I'm all plugged in here this morning. Tell me if I'm not. I can see there's already a huge thread going on, so that makes me super happy. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Crystal. Good morning, Linda. Good morning. Let me just catch up with what everyone's saying too. Yeah, I'm Eastern Standard Time. I'm in Connecticut. Thanks for checking in with each other and sharing info. Working on a rug. Crystal, you're working on a rug that is a dangerously minimal design. Crystal, all your rugs are minimalist rugs. That's your style. You should be totally comfortable with that because every single time it's like it works and it's a home run. Got to get your hands on the Three Bears pattern. Okay, that should be easy to do. We can probably help you with that because it's got to be out there. Isn't it so funny how your love for, like, this is a heavy Canadian week that we're doing here, ironically, with the election happening yesterday and today. It's a heavy Canadian week because, I realized we were talking a lot about American designers, American companies, and I thought, let's be a little bit more international and worldly and talk about, there's always going to be the question as to whether rug hooking, we know it was North America, but whether it originated in northern New England or the maritime area of Canada. And at the end of the day, who cares? But it's all interesting to talk about. And it's important to represent both of those schools of pattern making. We have got a great episode today with the Garrett thing continuing. I just cannot get enough of this subject. But isn't it funny is what I was going to say, how when you're talking about something that is close to your heart, like geographically or in terms of your heritage, you get so passionate about it, so extra passionate about it. It really hits home. That's how I feel about the Molly and I Toby rugs. I'm absolutely dying for the grandson to write me back because it's turned into such an emotional thing with me because she's from the hometown that I'm from. That I hope I can get back to someday, but it's really exclusive community these days. And it's certainly not the 80s anymore. So let's check in on the Three Bears pattern. Let's definitely check in and try to help each other with patterns we're looking for. That's a good use of this channel too, is to help each other. Chetty Camp, that's good. I actually have the book on Chetty Camp. That's coming up on my list of things to talk about. This is going to be coming up too. We'll see if maybe tomorrow or Friday we get into the history of Chetty Camp, because that's going to be a great Canadian tie-in as well. Good morning, Penny. Good morning, Doreen and Sharon. Good morning, Catherine, Linda B. Good morning, Heather. I've got to connect with you, lady. I've got to connect. Chetty Camp is definitely a place. Good morning, Karen, Joelle. That reminds me, good morning, Beverly. That reminds me, tonight is the composition class at 7 o'clock, 7 to 9. So there's a bunch of people that are going to be on that with the Edward Frost stencils. I maybe shouldn't have called it that because stencils is only part of what that class is. It's a composition class. And in the last class, Joelle reminded me of that. I feel like we did so well. Joelle, I hope you're working on that composition with the dog in the window and the squirrel idea, because it's so cool to do something that hits close to home. It means so much more. Speaking of which, bunch of things before we get started on our subjects for today. So many new people going. I realized a couple people wrote me yesterday and said that they didn't even know what my name is, which is completely forgivable because I never say it. I always go by Ribbon Candy Hooking, and I talk about the Ribbon Candy Hooking website and YouTube channel. But my name's Deanna, and I never say that. Deanna David, and I'm in Connecticut. So that's me. If you see me out there, that's me. I'm not private at all. I love having friends on Facebook too. I'm not going to talk about politics at all today. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to be patient as we've been advised to be and see how it goes. At the end of the day, I have dear friends on both sides of the fence, and I'm hoping for unity. That's what I'm hoping for, is to be normal again, is what my hope is. So a couple of things I want to talk to you about before we get into the Garrett's thing. Speaking of close to home, okay, first of all, I was working on Tom just a little bit. I haven't had a ton of time, but this is Native Tom. So this will be for the Facebook group and for us, for all of us. I haven't obviously blocked it because I'm not finished, but this will be the November for the Facebook group rug hooking and punch needle club. I do a monthly pattern for $45. It includes all the yarn. I hand dyed everything this time, everything. So I decided to do the Native Tom turkey rather than like the Macy's Day Parade turkey, a wild turkey. And you can see this pattern has been super, super, super fun for me. Besides the dyeing and completely out of my comfort zone colors, it's all yarn. And I've been doing what I've seen in the described in the Abenaki book, which I've also been looking at by Helen Albee, but also in just Native American art. So I was talking to my mom the other day about I think it was called the Haffenreffer Museum in like maybe Bristol or Warren, Rhode Island, where we used to go on field trips all the time. We didn't have lots of choices. We went there all the time, and I'm thinking back to the kind of art that I would see and how it was very color blocked in a way that in this composition, without it being blocked, it's hard to show you, but I've got like a teal green hillside and a lighter denim blue bottom down there and a navy sort of in the side. None of these really are the colors I'm saying. They're really sort of mutations of colors. They're all in between colors. But I'm remembering how Native American design includes a lot of color blocking and color changing behind, almost like you are looking at a cave painting, a much earlier cave painting of a wall, and you see color variation behind. So in that respect, I have, with that in mind, colored the turkey as a line drawing, colored the little hills that look like little rainbows and little river motifs against an ever-changing color background. So the thing with this kit, again, it's all done in yarn. So it's going to look like a Claire Murray rug because this is all bulky yarn, 3-ply bulky yarn. And again, I hand-dyed everything. And the little jewel border is going to be color changing too. So I'm deciding as I go. But the thing about this kit is that I will love seeing some of these done up. And I know a few people have already been pre-ordering them, and I haven't even put them for sale yet. So they are now, as of like 10 minutes ago, on ribboncandyhooking.com. The kit is for sale. I will announce a day for the class if you are a total beginner and you'd like to do the class together. I never charge a lot for that, but we'll be on Zoom together for a couple hours getting you started on the parts of the composition that will matter the most to getting you there. But the thing about this kit is that the nature of this design and the nature of Native American design, you can go anywhere you want with all those colors. You don't have to do, and you probably shouldn't do what I did. You should do what you like. Going from teals to darker greens. There's 3 greens here. There's at least three blues in the whole thing. I have little skeins because I measure as I go, so I know how much you need for the kit, and I always give you like 10 yards extra for each color. But you don't even have to do the outlining in white if you don't want to. I hope that if you get this kit that you will do what you want to do and not what the picture says. Do what feels right to you. Focus on what your favorite colors are and make those the centerpiece for this design. So that is now available on ribboncandyhooking.com. I will announce a thing for the class. I'll choose a class day. What did I do with my prize today? Don't tell me I lost it. I printed out the design that my mom did. The Christmas design I wanted to show you. It must be over there. So it must be a sign that we're going to have to wait till tomorrow. Figures that I would forget that because I told you yesterday it's just fantastic. Darned it. All right. If it turns up, it turns up, right? You'll have to trust me. It's amazing, and I'll show it to you tomorrow. You know what else happened today? This just came 2 minutes ago in the mail. So before we get started, let's look at what the centerfold is. You probably got your copy too. Maybe you already know. We'll look at this in detail tomorrow or the next day and see what they've got for us. Do you ever feel like a teenage boy with a copy of Playboy magazine when your rug hooking magazine comes and you can't wait to see what the centerfold is? So the centerfold is this. Let's see which design. Oh, good. It's going to be a nice Christmas thing. An Old World Santa, 3-dimensional for rug hooking. Isn't that going to be nice? Now, this is going to eliminate the problem of the dummy board, although we got our solution to that. The combination of wood with fabric right up against it for years and years. Let's pull it out and look at actually what it looks like. So it's not a double-sided. It's the Santa. They're showing you in real good detail how you're going to close this thing up if you end up making it. It's going to be an easy thing to do, real straightforward. Just like the pumpkins we just did, the Day of the Dead pumpkins. Real easy to do that. Very forgiving, closing up the edges of rug hooking. So this is what the pattern is going to look like in the centerfold. And otherwise, let's look tomorrow at the rest of the magazine, see what some of the highlights are, and some of the more important to us articles are, particularly the history stuff. So I wanted to talk about that. I told you about Native Tom. We keep talking about Blue Nose because of the Garret company, right? I'm transitioning to the Garret talk now. We learned yesterday, I learned yesterday that in Nova Scotia on the dime, the Blue Nose is the symbol. So I thought, hold on a second, why don't I take a tiny breather, step backward and define Blue Nose? Because other than knowing it as a rug hooking company, brand, I wasn't sure. I mean, I know it's a boat, but I thought, what kind of significance? Is it like the Mayflower? Or is it like the, I don't want to say Titanic because it's obviously something positive. But let's see what the Blue Nose actually is. I pulled it up on Wikipedia for us Americans. The Blue Nose was a fishing and racing gaff rig schooner built in 1921 in Nova Scotia. A celebrated racing ship and fishing vessel, the Blue Nose, under the command of Angus Walters, became a provincial icon for Nova Scotia and an important Canadian symbol in the 1930s, serving as a working vessel until she wrecked in 1946. Nicknamed the Queen of the North Atlantic, she was later commemorated by a replica Blue Nose 2, built in 1963. The name Blue Nose originated as a nickname for Nova Scotians as early as the late 18th century. Isn't that interesting? I wonder if that has to do with the coldness of the weather. It must, right? What else could it be? That's interesting. So the actual Blue Nose is long wrecked. Well, not long wrecked, the 1960s, I guess. No, 1946. But there is a number 2 there. Just like the Mayflower, right? The Mayflower wrecked. The Mayflower's main beam split on its way over to the United States. It split during the journey. Can you imagine how nerve-wracking that must have been for those poor people? And it dropped everybody off here, first in Provincetown, then in Plymouth, stopped in Provincetown, came to Plymouth. And then it made its way back, choking, to Europe, and then it was immediately scrapped. So the Mayflower that we always see in Plymouth is the Mayflower 2 as well. So same kind of setup. I just wanted to define Blue Nose because I keep saying the word. Now, I also want to say we are going to get into this book because I've held it up for 3 days and we haven't gotten there. Today is the day for us in this amazing book. This book isn't for everybody, right? And I've read a lot of reviews on it, and there was a lot of mixed reviews on it. But I have to say, personally, as a person who loves number 1 history and number 2 rug hooking history, I'm just gobbling this up Thanksgiving style. I absolutely love this book. If you are Canadian, you are going to extra love this book. It is. I don't want to say long-winded. It's very verbose. It's very. There's a lot of conversation, but it's all related to rug hooking and it's all very interesting. There's nothing in here that doesn't relate. So it is a very interesting reading book. So, and obviously it's nonfiction. So yesterday, I was really happy that my friend Susan Finn sent in a PM. She had a couple of Blue Nose patterns, and she said, "Can you tell me anything about these?" And I don't have the Blue Nose catalog, and I would love to get a copy of it. If you remember the video I did when I visited Margaret at River Mill Rugs in Florence, Mass. She had this one. She had the original 3 bears, which looks like this, right? This one's a bit brightened up, but this is the hand-colored version, like all the Blue Nose patterns were hand-colored versions of the 3 bears with a little plume of smoke. Remember, this is one of 2, along with the Blue Nose, the most famous, and this is the Blue Nose, the most famous and successful patterns that the Garret company put out, the Blue Nose patterns. This is the one that Margaret herself is working on. And she might have gotten much further by now because I went when it was hot with Mohair Judy. Hey, Mohair Judy. Hope everything's going well for you. We had a great time together there that day, and I loved what Margaret was doing. It's so different and new than what I'd seen before. And if you saw that video, you would say, well, yeah, those are Margaret's colors, right? She does everything so bright and electric. But she also, you probably can't see in this photo, she also had an original copy right here. So she had traced it and she was working on linen, right? Because we have learned over time and we have been told, it's been drilled into us to, ad nauseum, that the burlap does not last. Burlap certainly doesn't last. It's prone to rot when it's wet. So of course, if you're having it on the floor, even if you don't plan to step on it and you do bare feet in the house and all that, it's still under attack and at risk. At the same time, burlap will last a good 100 years. So it really depends on what you want. On the wall, it can last indefinitely, but it is more prone to rot than, for example, linen, monk's cloth, or rug warp. So that's something to think about. So something that has come up twice in the last 24 hours that I really want to address just very, very quickly and then jump into the history. Susan sent these 2 rugs, and it's possible that she might be selling these 2 patterns. These are 2 Blue Nose patterns, beautiful floral, and you can see they hand-painted part of it just to give you enough cues to know where to go with the coloring, and a suggestion, right? It's completely up to you. And then this really lovely one, too. So Susan was writing about these 2 Blue Nose patterns. Now, 2 people in the last 24 hours have written to ask the question or to mention, to discuss the idea of when you trace a pattern from the original pattern, a historic pattern, a super historic pattern, an even more historic pattern, When you trace that with whatever method you use, I like to use the fiber tape, but other people like to use different kinds of netting or red dot or whatever. When you transfer that pattern onto the backing of your choice, linen, rug, warp, monk's cloth, people are being told, again, I'm going to say something super controversial, and I know that this is super controversial, and I'll probably lose viewers over this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I have to say it. People keep being told when they go to sort of the powers that be in the rug cooking world that if you trace a pattern, even a historic pattern like the ones that are in question, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about some pearl gowns that are extremely rare that I'm going back and forth with the same person on. People keep being told to destroy the original. Now, this gives me horrible stomach cramps and makes me want to overturn every piece of furniture in this house because I understand the business angle of selling, but I also would venture the guess and would make a bet with the left anything part of my body that when these old patterns were sold, there were different copyright rules to them, and that the people who owned the rights to them now are not the people who owned the rights to them when they were sold. You can never make a copy of something and sell multiples of it, right? That just can't be done. That's not supposed to be done. It's against the rules. That's a copyright thing. We'll talk about copyright images in another episode. It's not a fun subject, but it's worth knowing about so you know where you stand with stuff. In this case, if you make a copy of something, and I'm going to say it, if you're being told to destroy the original of a beautiful, rare, historic pattern, please don't. Please be a naughty little skunk and roll it up and put it somewhere or frame it or use it as wall art. Just don't sell it multiple times. But please do not listen to anybody who tells you to destroy the original copy of a beautiful historic thing. Because when you get that advice, that is business advice, and that is about money. That is not about integrity. That is not about caring about history. That is not about being a steward and preserving history. That is about money. So be very, very careful. Nobody, the rug police will not come to your door. They will not automatically send. There will not be a sign in the sky from like Spider-Man or Superman that you have done this naughty thing and kept the original. But please don't throw out your originals. I know at Donna's place in Woodstock, Connecticut, Whispering Hill, above her bed, she has a beautiful Edward Frost of the Stag. Now that is a really historic hand-colored pattern. She's got that above her bed framed. Very glad that that's there. I'm very happy for everybody who has these original early patterns. It is very important to keep them. Don't do naughty stuff like making multiples. That is naughty, and you will get in trouble, and God knows what will happen because there's a lot of rug hooking police out there. But they will not come to your house if you keep something beautiful and original that is a piece of history. So please think about that lots before you take that kind of advice. There's a very fine line between being a good business person and being ridiculous, especially right now. So anyway, I'm done with that. Sorry if I offended anybody, but it just makes me crazy. We sit here talking about historic patterns and how important it is to keep that history and how difficult it is to chase that history. So if you are like willfully destroying it, that is just like beyond for me. That's beyond. I'm stopping. So Rescued from Oblivion along these lines. Again, this book is by Suzanne and Hugh Conrod, Conrod. They are the founders of the Mecca, the Rug Hooking Museum of North America, which is in Canada. So Hugh has passed away since. Suzanne is still on the board of directors, so I assume she's very alive and well and probably alert, electric, and a lovely lady, has had this wonderful adventure with these patterns. So let's look at this book and about the connection that they make, the significant connection that they make with the Garrett Company. So this isn't going to be a today episode again. This is going to be a whole Grand Slam Canada week. This book is about, just in a nutshell, about their adventure chasing the Garrett patterns that and equipment from the old Garret Factory. I did have a beautiful picture of the Garret Factory. Let me see if I still have it. I know I showed it in a past episode, but I would love to show it again. It's out of focus in the picture, but this was the Garret Factory. And there's a beautiful picture of it in this book with all kinds of bunting on it. It probably was I'm guessing it was in 76. I'll see if I get to the photo when Queen Elizabeth came, because I think it was for like the bicentennial celebration or something. I know it's Canada, but still, I know there was a visit from a queen, so I assume that was it. So I'm paraphrasing a lot from this book. And this book, again, I am not hitting all of it. I'm hitting highlights. Hugh and Suzanne Conrod. This is available on Amazon. It came very quickly. This is about their adventure going to the old Garret Factory that I just showed you many times and really making a painstaking very thorough search of what was left there that could be saved. And it is important. Many of the things they found are missing links to the blue nose patterns and the rug hooking, the Garrett company. So this book takes into account lots of things. We've only been looking at internet stuff so far. This book is very comprehensive, and this is the subject that it's on. So she introduces their adventure by saying, a bit of antiquing unexpectedly evolved into an exciting and hazardous adventure in that crisp autumn fall day, 2004, in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. So off they go. It all transpired in a century-old basement infused with grime, dust, cobwebs, and mold accumulated from a long-forgotten past. Unknown to us two retirees starting out on a romantic wedding anniversary trip, it would turn out to be a curtain riser to a project that would consume the rest of our lives. That's a very good first page. So they went to this building, Garrett's, now it's called Garrett's by the Bridge Antiques. So it is the old Garrett's building. They went to this rambling old framed building with the intention of seeing what they could see. So, of course, when they went in, they saw some old rugs and some interesting things that had to do with rug hooking history. But they immediately were in touch with the shop owner, whose name was Eddie, and by all accounts is so lovely, forthcoming, helpful, and kind. And a big part of this story, his willingness to be helpful. So he owns the place now. And he had the remnants of stock, like the new old stock of things that were from the factory, but they weren't seeing anything different in the shop part of this adventure. So they asked Eddie if they could, if there was anything left of the old factory, like the nails, the nuts and bolts of the thing. And he said, well, he at this point is a bit, I don't want to say handicapped. She says crippled in the books. I'm not really sure what the nature of it is, but he's not super mobile. And he says he has not been into the basement for years. So this is good for them, but he allows them to go down into the basement. So that in itself was a huge boon for rug hooking history and for us rug hookers. So he was very, very friendly, allowed them, he was running some errands. He allowed them to come back the next day and go down into the basement. And they said, even for them, being quite mobile and vivacious, it was still a tough climb down there. Very wet, dangerous, sewage pipes leaking, that kind of thing, tough circumstances. So they made their way into the basement amid these dripping water pipes, leaking water, rotting cardboard cartons, and absolutely no light. So they brought their lights and all that. She says, I'm not sure if Hugh or Suzanne is writing in the first person, but one of them says, no Hollywood horror movie could have been more dramatically replicated than this inhibiting scene. So very off-putting approaching this basement, but it had to be done. And I'm very glad they did it. They also mentioned that they were not the first people who had been down there. Now, this is worrying. This is going to lead to other connections that we need to try to follow together. They know that there were various antique dealers from Nova Scotia who'd been down there in the past, according to Eddie. They'd visited, investigated, and bought items. They knew that 5 years earlier that there was a, Hugh or Suzanne keeps referring to this individual as a commercial entrepreneur. So that in itself seems like a clue, but I can't picture what she's getting at. It seems like she's being diplomatic somehow because that phrase gets repeated again and again. But there was a commercial entrepreneur downstairs who took a lot, including part of the rug hooking stuff, the stencils and things like that. I don't have a sort of thread on where they went to after that. I'm not even going to make a guess. I have one tiny lead that's probably unrelated. We'll get to that in a second, that I found on the internet. But anyway, it turns out that this commercial entrepreneur, even though she had been there 5 years earlier, she had bought stuff, bought the things, paid for the things, chosen, bought, left. She sued Hugh and Suzanne like years later for the stuff that she didn't pick up when she was down there rootling through. I mean, that's like unbelievable. So in this book, Suzanne mentions that, you know, they have never to this date been paid back for the legal costs of that. So the only reason I mention that is because it's scary when you get involved in a project like this. It can become expensive, and it's very unfair that somebody would just sue you out of the blue for stuff that they missed on their first rake through after they were done and gone 5 years earlier. And she also mentions that while on one of their visits, while they were in the basement looking at this old stuff, an antique dealer came down without permission, and they had to call somebody to escort him out because he was down there actively rutling through things while Hugh and Suzanne were down there. This is how competitive and crazy people can be. So all of this is very worrying to me from the standpoint of the history of rug hooking, because it is competitive and it is crazy. And there's obviously some very aggressive people out there who seriously lack integrity. So she mentions, had it not been for the persistence of one of the things about this book, people review say it's very sort of self-congratulatory, but I think it's well deserved because, Hugh and Suzanne spent a lot of their retirement money doing this and buying this stuff to make it safe. A lot of the things they found are now in the Rug Hooking Museum of North America, right? That they found it. A lot of the stuff, everything they pulled out is there. So they spent a lot of their money doing this. This was not the healthiest endeavor for retired people to be down there time after time, rutling through boxes of sewage wet documents, but they did. So the tone of this book is very conversational and a little bit long, but it's full of interesting nuggets, and I highly recommend it. So she mentions that slowly they unveil a bunch of things, and one of them, this is definitely carrying over into tomorrow, is a box of not stencils, not documents, but a huge collection of tiny 4x6 or smaller pen and ink drawings of rugs. So you know what that made me think of immediately was this ad that we showed yesterday, right? These very well-drawn, almost etched quality black and white drawings, right? This is a theme we're going to come back to still. We have a few more minutes and tomorrow, because this discovery of hundreds of these little drawings become known at, and they were in immaculate condition, by the way, considering the box was soaked. They assume that they are being drawn by John or Frank Garrett, the father or the son. We're going to come back to that in the chronology of this. But these become known as the mystery rugs because they're not able to place them at first. They're also going to find back-to-back a second discovery, which is another little pouch, a huge collection of tiny stencils about the same size. Teensy, tiny little stencils. Not the kind of stencils you would use if you were going to make a mat. Not even a small mat, right? Not even a dollhouse mat. These were like tiny little stencils. So this era of discovery is going to be known as the mystery rugs. These two back-to-back discoveries, they don't know what these little stencils are used for, and they can't think or they can't find through catalogs and research what the drawings are used for. But trying to figure out the purpose of hundreds of little, in these days, we're talking about the mid-19th century, cutting stencils was a proper craft, like German paper cutting. It was hard to do. It was hard to get the right tools. It was hard to keep your tools sharp. These were perfection. These were like brand new little stencils, but way too small to make a rug. So without the help of like projection equipment, the question becomes, what were they used for? There were the drawings and there were the stencils. What were the stencils used for? It becomes a huge mystery that sort of overarches the story for quite a few years. So they got into an immediate active negotiation with Eddie about buying all of the big equipment that they found in the basement, because the big stuff was still there. And all of this stuff, the machinery, right, that would make, we're going to get more into the how, because believe it or not, Frank and John, his dad, they manufactured stencils differently, right? They both created, they worked together alongside each other. There's been a lot of talk. I've been reading back on Facebook historically, magazine article, shorts and things about the relationship and the suggestion that they fought. There is no real suggestion, just reading back on it, it's just drama. But they, for whatever reason, prefer different methods of producing commercial patterns, right? And we're going to get to that tomorrow because I'm already running out of time. But Hugh and Suzanne went into an immediate negotiation and rescued the machinery part of what was still in the basement, right? This is the big, heavy, expensive stuff. And this stuff is in the museum, the Rug Hooking Museum of North America. So when life returns to normal, hopefully sooner rather than later, I know I'm going to shoot up there this year in the spring. And hopefully, assuming all goes well, right? God willing. But I'm going to check all this out, because this part of it, she mentions in this paragraph, last momentous find, like the big stuff. and how they use their retirement money to get this stuff, move this stuff, and keep it for us to look at years later, is so important, because we talk a lot about the history of patterns and pattern making, but we hardly ever talk about how the patterns are made. The machines are just as important. To be able to look at those and get a really good picture of how it was done is an important part. Nobody did that but Suzanne and Hugh. Nobody saved those machines. These are the people who did that. I think it's just remarkable. So good morning. All right. So you know what? Let's stop there, because there are so many more discoveries to talk about. And I want to show you a bunch more things, but it goes by so fast. We have to keep talking about the Garretts and their patterns and the sort of difference between Frank and John as time goes on, as we learn. And also remember Ferguson, Kenny Ferguson is the auctioneer who we much later learn also designed patterns. Remember, he had them for sale in a big shop window, and that's how John first heard about them. But, he thought they weren't going to sell, so he sold everything off super cheap. And that's when the Garretts bought them. And they incorporated many of those designs into their work and put their name on everything, quite rightly, because they had bought them. But Kenny Ferguson was the artist there. So we're talking about 3 different artists, at least, when we talk about the Garrett business and the blue nose patterns. So let's come back to all this tomorrow, because there's a lot more to do. Tomorrow is only Thursday. I'll just remind you, Native Tom is up on ribboncandyhooking.com. Thank you for all the links and interesting things everybody's sending. I've read all of the pages on the .ca history site on this subject, and all the pages on the Rug Cooking Museum site. So I've got this book to look at and a few more articles, a few more thoughts that I want to put in tomorrow to ending some of these mysteries. And maybe we can add some more info ourselves too. I know some of you know things I don't know, and just kick it in anytime. Send it to me or write it here in the thread. Also, as soon as I close the video, the thread goes away for me. So if you have something you want to talk to me about or tell me and you think I missed it, please write to me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com, because I can't see any of the comments afterward. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Stay positive, stay up. Whatever will be, will be. We will be together regardless tomorrow, and we'll be talking more about Canadian rug cooking history, the Garretts and the blue nose patterns. Have a great day. Yeah.